The news that former White House counsel Don McGahn must testify before Congress hit with a bang from that federal court ruling, partly because McGahn rarely speaks in public at all. There is one exception, McGahn appearing at the powerhouse conservative conference CPAC just last year. It's an event Donald Trump has attended yearly since 2015, and which is organized by a veteran of the Bush White House, Matt Schlapp, chairman of the very same American Conservative Union and a vocal supporter of Donald Trump with a lot of insight into how it all works. And Matt Schlapp is my guest. Good evening, sir.
Good to be with you again, Ari.
Absolutely. Given that so many people around Trump have admitted to this quid pro quo, what is the defense to the Ukraine plot and impeachment now?
I don't know what they're trying to prove. Actually, if I watched these hearings at length, and I actually didn't see any witness have any evidence of any quid pro quo. Matter of fact, there was no witness with any evidence of any crime. And I think that's one of the problems for the Democrats is that without a crime, the search for impeachment looks awfully political to independent voters.
Well, let's take each piece that you raised, because always interesting to get where your perspective is. On the evidence, let's play some of it. Here is not only Ambassador Sondland, who remains employed by the president, so there can't be that much disagreement about what he said under oath, but, of course, Mick Mulvaney, who you know as well.
Did he also mention to me in the past the corruption related to the DNC server? Absolutely. No question about that.
But to be clear, what you just described is a quid pro quo.
We do that all the time with foreign policy.
Was there a quid pro quo? As I testified previously, with regard to the requested White House call and the White House meeting, the answer is yes.
What exactly did you hope Zelensky would do about the Bidens after your phone call? Exactly. Well, I would think that if they were honest about it, they'd start a major investigation into the Bidens.
Does the Trump impeachment defense have to pretend those things didn't happen, those things weren't said?
No, Ari. Look, I have a lot of respect for you, and I'm sure you watched as many minutes of Sondland's testimony as I did. And as you know, under cross-examination from Republicans, he admitted that he didn't have any evidence of a quid pro quo, and he surmised a quid pro quo, which is why he put that in his opening statement, but that he admitted that he had no proof of it, and there was no evidence of any crime. And so I think what happened with many of these shift witnesses, upon cross-examination, we realized it was pretty thin gruel on any evidence of any crimes on behalf of Donald Trump about Ukraine.
So that's interesting. You're taking the position that the best defense is to really push back on those accusations of quid pro quo, which is different than saying perfect call. Well, let me show you something for your response.
No, I don't have look, I think we use, let me just be clear about this. We use our foreign aid for all kinds of reasons. The Obama administration had 8 years of their policies, which they tried to push through with foreign aid. And Trump has his policies, which he's trying to push through with foreign aid. The problem with your lead up to your interview with me is that you're saying that the president was guilty of bribery, but he solicited no money, as you know. That has nothing to do with what Rod Blagojevich did in Illinois. And second of all, what Hunter Biden did under the Obama-Biden administration, accepting $83,000 a year from Burisma, this gas company, and having the vice president call off the investigation.
In fairness, Matt, my lead up to you was showing. In fairness, my lead up to you was showing how CPAC is an important part of the conservative
process.
That,
in all candor, I mean before that. But thank you for the compliments about CPAC.
Well, it's also true. You're a big part of this conservative movement that is now getting the president back. On the evidence, because I want to stick to that for your response, here was what Sondland provided as the White House email. Mulvaney, Perry, Pompeo, all on here. And you see it right there. Zelensky on the call will assure Trump he intends to run the investigation. And then you have Mulvaney saying, I asked the Security Council to set up the call. Obviously, the difference to past administrations would be, this is the theory of the case, that Donald Trump was seeking domestic re-election help, not foreign policy goals. Your response?
Well, look, would there be a political benefit to Donald Trump and Republicans generally if Hunter Biden's and Joe Biden's potential criminal wrongdoing was exposed? Absolutely. But you can't get past the fact that this, Ari, if you're concerned about impeachable offenses surrounding foreign aid, wasn't it problematic that Joe Biden went to the Council on Foreign Relations and bragged about the fact that he was able to get a prosecutor fired who was going to do many things and many good things. But he was also someone who was going after Burisma, which is a company on which Hunter Biden served on the board. If Joe Biden was really worried about
let me take that
ethical,
up because
he would have recused himself from that or asked his son to step away from the board membership.
Let's take that up because I can imagine heads exploding across America hearing you make the argument, but you're here to make it.
But you agree with me.
The case.
You agree with me that looked bad, right, Ari? You're a smart lawyer. That looked bad.
I'm gonna moderate, but I'm gonna tee it up like this. If you are right. Okay. If you are right, and there is a goal of legitimate investigations, then I point back to the evidence, because that's sort of my thing, that's sort of my job here, then why did so many people say under oath that the goal was not actually doing the investigation, but having it announced on CNN on Fareed Zakaria? I'm going to play that for you for your response. This is Sondland and others saying it wasn't about doing an investigation. That goes to what you just said, but just having domestic political attacks on the Bidens. Take a look.
He had to announce the investigations. He didn't actually have to do them, as I understood it.
This was a demand that President Zelensky personally commit on a cable news channel to a specific investigation of President Trump's political rival.
And then, of course, there's also Mr. Zakaria, who confirmed his part of it. What is your response to that it looked like a specific request? Mr. Sondland still works for the Trump administration, said it under oath, to get the Bidens dirtied up on TV, sir.
Yeah, well, I guess what I would say is that the charge is that Ukrainian aid was withheld and with Ukrainian aid was transferred, that no investigation of Hunter Biden ever commenced, and that Donald Trump actually gave them lethal foreign aid, the ability to go after their enemies. So if the charge is that some kind of investigation had to start before the aid went through, why did the aid go through without that investigation starting?
Well, respectfully, you're now moving over to the money part, but I'm asking you, if it was a real legitimate inquiry they wanted, why did it have to be announced on American TV?
I think it should be announced on all news outlets that Hunter Biden was guilty, at least of the appearance that somehow he was leveraging his father's role as the head of Ukrainian policy under the Obama administration in a way that to the benefit of Burisma. And so once again, I would say this is that your analogy with Rod Blagojevich in Illinois doesn't work, because it was Rod Blagojevich who was asking for cash to sell a Senate seat. It was Rod Blagojevich who was guilty of the wrongdoing. In this case, it's Hunter Biden. And even honest Democrats, maybe off the air, will admit this looks, sounds, and smells terrible. And if Joe Biden cared about ethics, he would have said to his son, go make money in another country. Don't do it in the country where I have the lead.
You're bringing back up the precedent in the United States that Pat Fitzgerald, who served under the same president you did, President Bush, found that when someone asked for a favor and plotted a bribe on the phone, they went to jail for 14 years.
Yeah, but it wasn't called bribery.
That precedent what they will.
But it was not called bribery.
Well, it was. One of the offenses was bribery. I'm out of time, but Mr. Schlapp, as always, I appreciate you coming on. I'm obligated to fit in a break. Thank you to Matt Schlapp. We'll have you back on. We'll be right back.
Thank you, Ari.